Okay, thanks very much. I'm delighted to see that most of you hung on. When I seen my name in the brochure and it was very end, I said, oh my God, they put me at the end because they expected everybody to be shooting off as quick as possible. So it's a little bit of a relief to see everybody here. What I want to talk about is, I want to just give you some basic tools and also to discuss the importance of not just airway, but flow. Because airway gets all the consideration in an obstructive sleep apnea. How open is the airway? But I think it's just as important to be considering what's the volume of air that's passing through that airway. We need to look at the relationship between breathing and airway size. Now, many people feel that, breathing is an involuntary activity. It's not subject to change. But breathing changes, and it changes very much. It changes from, and possibly it's passed down through genetics, that there's a genetic predisposition to how we breathe. And there's also mirroring how we breathe based on our parents. Lifestyle factors, especially modern living, including stress, also influence breathing. And we develop habits, such as dysfunctional breathing patterns, and none of these jump out at you. These are very, very simple things. These are, habits that you see with your clients and patients all of the time. And yet, they never get much consideration. So the child or adult that walks into your surgery with the mouth open, or the individual who's having a sigh every now and again, or the person who's breathing you hear they're breathing at rest, or somebody who is regular sniffing, or if they're yawning considerably with large breaths, upper chest breathing, or noticeable breathing. That's what we look at. And if we see that taking place, alarm bells go off. Because the harder you breathe, the less oxygen that's delivered to the tissues. And what I'll impart to you is, we will do simple exercises and to see, is there a change in your own physiology as a result of doing the exercises? Can we show you how to decongest the nose? Can we show you how to open up your blood vessels? Can we show you how to open up the upper airways and the lower airways? And can we show you a relationship between breathing and OSA? And before we consider it, we have to consider, when I was flying here, there was a guy behind me fell asleep on the plane, and I was listening to his breathing. And it wasn't light, it was heavy. Can you snore and have light breathing? When you're listening to somebody snore, how are they breathing? Their breathing is relatively fast. It's noisy, and it's a large amplitude. There's no pauses between breathing. Because as soon as the person breathes out, they have to breathe back in again. It's noticeable breathing. And how we breathe during the day determines how we breathe during our sleep. If you have dysfunctional breathing patterns during the day, you cannot automatically expect them to change or to improve during sleep. But we can change our breathing during the day. And by changing our breathing during the day, we can change our breathing during sleep. Do people with OSA breathe lightly? How do you breathe when you're stressed? Look at the breathing of people who are sick. Light breathing is healthy breathing. If you were going for a run alongside an elite athlete, that elite athlete will have light breathing for their given level of physical exercise. We all breathe differently. And breath hold time is just a simple measurement. When we're looking at what I'm doing is, we have a measurement called the control pause, which we use in adults. It's basically the length of your comfortable breath hold time. And it's a very good measurement of breathlessness. And it also gives you some feedback of how the individual is breathing. So we look at the individual, we pick up on how they're breathing, and we also use a breath hold time called the control pause. If the control pause is less than 20 seconds, main symptoms are present, including nasal obstruction, asthma symptoms, coughing and wheezing, snoring, and OSA. But OSA, it'll obviously depend on genetic predisposition. But the lower the breath hold time, the harder the person breathes. And there's been quite a number of studies showing the relationship. I only put up one, but there's many studies looking at, well, certainly I have 6 or 7 of them, looking at the relationship between breath hold time and dyspnea. How hard is the person breathing? The The harder you breathe, the lower your breath hold time. They've looked at it with cystic fibrosis, they've looked at it with severe asthma. This one here looking at it with COPD, but they included asthma here. That there was a direct relationship, that the breath hold time was considerably lower in COPD, and they included asthma in this instance, than in controls, and that these measures correlated positively with spirometry readings. So breath hold time is a measurement that you can have, in simple terms, look at how your patients breathe, sit them down for 10 minutes and measure how long do they comfortably hold their breath for on the exhalation. The lower the breath hold time, the harder they breathe. The harder they breathe during rest, the harder they breathe during sleep. Straight away. Very simple measurement, non-invasive, and it will give you some feedback.